Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. My name is Brett. I'll be your host today, and I'm here with Erik Van Horn. Erik is a co-founder and partner at Front Street Equity Partners, and I'm glad that you're here with me today. Erik, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here, Brett.
Tell us a little bit about Front Street so listeners have some context about who you are and what you're up to.
Sounds good. So Front Street Equity Partners is in the franchising space. So I grew up in the franchising world. Once I decided not to go to law school because I was a straight C student, so law school was going to be a big mess. And then I got involved with a franchise as a franchisee in my early 20s. And then over the next 10 years, I started 7 different brands as a franchisee, and then just started to get on the franchisor side of things and an investor. And so fast forward, 20 years, I've got a company with 3 other business partners called Front Street Equity Partners. And what we do is we work with franchisors and we help them strategically as strategic advisors with capital. And then we also are outsourced, have an outsourced sales arm where we can help them bring in new franchisees. And so we've got a number of brands and always looking for more brands that are current franchisors or getting into the franchising space. So everything franchising, man, that's my world.
All right. We'll call you Erik Franchise Van Horn. That's your middle name.
There we go.
Yeah. And it sounds like you talked about in your 20s being part of 7 different brands, 7 different franchises. Were you operating all of those in parallel with one another or one at a time during those years?
Actually, I'll step back a little bit further. So I started one, and I think I might have misspoke a little bit. I had my first 10 years were with one brand, and I also owned a region. So I took that region from 4 locations to 42 locations and sold that. The next 10 years is when I had 6 or 7 more brands as a franchisee or as a area developer, and I grew those. And they were all grown through had partnerships in everything. So different partnerships in those different brands. So first 10 years, I had one brand and then had a nice exit with that one in Austin, Texas, and took that capital and started to deploy that into other brands. And I did own multiple brands at the same time. So in the franchising world, it's like a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee. And then I was also started a franchisor and got in on that side of things as well.
All right. Very good. And you might not have misspoke. Sometimes I mislistened. So glad we got that cleared up. But
now the listeners are going to know that you're being kind there, because as I was saying, I'm like, I think I just said it for the first time incorrectly. So the listener will be like, yep, Brett was right. Erik was wrong.
Well, the listeners will know that Brett's been happily married for 27 years. And you have to develop that kind of listening is what happens. All right. Well, let's get into lessons learned, because you have a lot of great experience in growing. And I know in the franchise world, we use the term brand a lot, and growing brands, but let's call it a business. You've grown businesses that in significant ways, multiple locations. And while each individual location might not have been a large organization, by the time you stack that up across multiple locations, that's a lot of people, a lot of organization, a lot of chaos potentially. And I'd love to get any insights that you have for our listeners around organizing chaos as the team grows. Like, what are some of the keys to putting more and more people on the same page so we can take targeted, coordinated action towards some shared objectives?
We'll talk about one of the businesses that I had called Solo Salon Studio. So it's a salon suite franchise, and I got into that with 3 other business partners, and we grew that over 5 years and then had an 8-figure exit when we sold that to private equity. So that might be a good one to talk about. I did have exits before that one and exits after that one, but that one is, I was on different podcasts talking about that particular one. So challenges that I had there is, one of them that I we were coming out of the bad real estate recession, just think about that a number of years ago. It was just really bad. And then here we were going into a expensive lease situation, leasing 7,000, 8,000 square feet of retail space. And so no one was really wanting to get into it at that point. And we were very kind of hesitant to do that. But we started to get into some of these locations, and we signed basically 3 leases within about 6 months of each other. So we were on the hook for, big build outs, 3 locations getting open up within 6 months of each other. The first location we opened up, it was an average location. We started to cash flow it probably 4 months, 5 months after we opened up. The second location, we all thought that was going to be just the most amazing location ever. And when I say we thought, you kind of know what's going to happen. It was in Huntington Beach, and we we're like, this thing's going to blow up. And it was a dog. That was a dog location. It didn't, we were dumping cash back into that thing for a long time. And then the third location that we opened up just months after that, the Huntington Beach one, was in Irvine, California. And that thing opened up 100% full, like the best thing, the most rent that we were collecting from our stylists in that particular business model. And so highest revenue, incredible profit margins, and we couldn't do anything to screw that one up. So we had one that was average, one that was below average, and then one was above average. And so looking back, I'm so glad that we decided to open up 3 at the same time, because what if we had decided to open up that Huntington Beach one first, and we look back and we stopped everything? Well, I would have never had that 8-figure exit. And so lesson there is just, you will have dogs as you open up more locations or grow your business. There will be challenges and there will be setbacks, but we didn't, we were forced to continue moving and continue growing. And then seeing that one that was just lighting the world on fire, no matter what we did, helped us understand better about the business model. And so future locations that we opened up, we had more confidence in, and we were opening up better locations. So wasn't really a bad thing for us, but it was something that helped us, go grow those to 12 locations and ultimately sell it. One other thing with that, when we first started out, the owners in that business, we didn't want to be active in the business. We wanted to be pretty hands off. So we knew that we needed to hire someone that was a rock star, A+ player, to be able to, talk to the bank, talk to the landlords, talk to the contractors, talk to the stylists, talk to everybody. So we needed somebody that acted like an owner. And we hired like 3 of the wrong people. So our first one, they were not at that level. They were probably a $50,000 a year person that could manage one salon location with some hairstylists. That was their cap. And yet it was on us as owners hiring the wrong person. We hired the wrong person, put them in the wrong position. And so the next one, we were leveling up, and we learned that same lesson, Brett, 2 more times. And then we're just like, okay, we need to go to the drawing board. Who is it that we need? Like, what are the characteristics in this person that we need? And then how much do we need to pay to get that person? And it was well into the 6 figures that we needed to pay this person. And we looked around to the 4 of us in the partnership. And we're like, well, none of us want to do it. We wouldn't do it for that amount of money. But we'd happily, each give up $50,000 a year a piece to be able to have somebody do all the work so we didn't have to. And so we went on we got clear on the type of person that we needed in that district operational role. We got clear on how much we're going to pay for that person. And we went through an extensive process of interviewing multiple people, and eventually hired Mirko, who came from the leasing background in commercial leasing. And had the background to deal with banks and lenders and landlords and contractors and everybody. So he had that experience. We hired him, put him into place after, opened up 3 on our own without him. And that was the last time that we ever really had to do much work in that business, because we hired the right person, paid him the right amount of money, gave him the right amount of compensation, and empowered him to be able to do it. And he kept us in the loop as he was supposed to. So that was the big kind of lesson learned for us, with 3 mishires and then getting that great one.
Well, I'm glad you learned it as quickly as you did. And it's painful, right? And it's costly. At first, you didn't want to pay what it would take, probably. I mean, nobody wants to pay six figures for somebody that you think maybe I could get this for 75 grand or whatever. But you guys got really clear first, or eventually. But before you hired that fourth successful candidate, was like, who is this person? And so the first three enabled you to figure out who it was. And with that clarity, you go find the right person and they knock it out of the park. So I love that example. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. I also like what you shared, the principle of what you shared, although the application of it might be a little challenging for some of our listeners. The idea of opening those three locations at once. So let's broaden that principle a little bit, or let's grab the principle, even if the application might be hard for some businesses. The principle is when you're going after revenue growth or launching your product in the marketplace, one channel or one location or one thing might be the one that doesn't work. But if you go with a few, you can see which one is going to fire better, and you can put more behind that. So I love that idea. One time I guess last year I was going to hire a sales development rep, and I have a sales coach. I talked to my sales coach. He's like, you never want to hire one rep. You want to hire at least two, because then you can see of the two which one's going to work better. I think it's a similar principle as the one that you shared. Like let's diversify our risk a little bit over two or three people or two or three locations, and you're much more likely to see if the thing will actually work. So love that. Anything else you want to add on?
Yeah, and even on that,
lessons?
with that principle, I have masterminds and stuff for franchisors and franchisees and passive investors. And so, starting out with like what product or what's the right amount of pay that they need to pay, or the price that I'm going to charge them, and what am I going to deliver for that? And so when I first started doing that, I had multiple offers. And because I didn't know which one the marketplace really wanted and what the need was and where the leads were going to come from. So I did multiple things. I had my podcast. I turned that into a Facebook group, so I was casting a wide net to be able to build my personal brand and my audience, and not just doing one thing, but doing multiple things. And the Facebook group turned out to be the best thing for that. Podcast to the Facebook group, and that Facebook group has 7,000 people in it that are just really focused on franchising. So it's a really good, solid Facebook group. But that's been, I wouldn't have started the Facebook group because I didn't think, unless a friend of mine that had success in it in the past said, Erik, you really need to do this. So I'm like, okay, I'll do this as one of the things. And I started it 2 years later than I should have. He kept telling me to do it. And that guy is making 8 figures in net profit a year in his business through his Facebook group. So he's doing amazing with that. And I should have listened to him a long time ago. But what that turned into is just this captive audience. It's my stage that I didn't realize at that time that I was really building a stage for myself. And now that Facebook group, I can go in there and I can say, I'm looking for a fractional COO or CMO or full-time brand president for one of my brands at Front Street Equity Partners. And I can go in there and just build out this list of amazing talent. And so now I have a list of hundreds of C-level executives that are in franchising that are not necessarily looking for work, but they want to know what's available out there. And so I got all these other brands that are trying to get access to that list. Hey, today someone's like, hey, I need a brand president for this particular spa concept. And I'm like, sorry, I don't, this is ours. This is for my brand. So that makes me more valuable, makes Front Street more valuable because we have access to amazing vendors and amazing talent. And so even back then, Brett, I did that to really funnel into my masterminds, but then it really turned into something even more valuable as I started Front Street Equity Partners. So, that principle of just doing multiple things and seeing what sticks and then understand why it sticks and then double down on the stuff that's actually working.
Yeah, love that. Very good. Okay, well, let's transition to the part of this podcast where we want to give some real help on a pressing business challenge that you may be facing. And I realize that you help a lot of franchisees and a lot of franchisors in their business. So it could be your business, it could be one of the businesses you're advising. But in the seven-figure scaling space, there are sometimes internal challenges. We're trying to build the business that limit us. And we might have the brand thing all figured out and the go-to-market and the product and the pricing and like all of that's working, but we're having some internal growing pains. Is there an issue that you could bring to our podcast today that we could maybe work on together that would be instructive for those who are listening?
I think a common theme that I see out there in franchising or people building businesses, and they get to this point where they don't have enough revenue coming in, but they need to build out some systems, some processes, or have some key hires before enough revenue is coming in. So to get ready for the growth. So growth is coming. It's inevitable. You know, you're going to have a $1 million net profit year next year. But in order to get there, you need to invest into some software, into, you know, ads, or just a COO or a CEO. Because a lot of us entrepreneurs are very visionary. We're very, you know, that type of person, and operations isn't probably the main thing. At least for me, operations is not my greatest strength. Visionary connection, strategic advice, stuff like that, you know, is more in my wheelhouse. So, like, what would you say to a founder or an owner that needs to invest in infrastructure, whether it's human capital or something in their business? Maybe it's real capital to get another truck or another location before they're really ready for it. Like, from a mindset standpoint or practical standpoint, like, what advice would you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to make a distinction between what I see in many business owners, which is a scarcity mentality, and what I see in the ones who figure it out, which is they somehow they get themselves into an investment mentality, an investor mentality. And you know the difference because you've lived it or you've seen enough businesses go through this. There was a time in my own business where every single day, especially around the pandemic, I lost about 30% of our members, you know, overnight. And I'm like, okay, this could be a scary year. And every morning I would look at the bank balance, right? And you know, business owners that just look at the bank balance every day. It's like we're at a place where we're strapped for cash. We're trying to keep this thing going. And so we go to the bank balance and we look at it. Well, when you're in that place, you're in this like survive mentality, scarcity mentality. You can't think as an investor very well unless you're really disciplined to figure out how to get your head in that space. So you think more about what I can afford or what I can't afford, versus when you have access to a line of credit or some additional capital, you would think differently about a business decision. You would actually look at the potential ROI for that investment. You would look at the time it would take to get that ROI, and you'd be able to think like an investor. So unfortunately, a lot of the business owners you and I both know are operating from this place of the cash is tight, or, you know, what I built, I've sort of maxed out what the operations can support today. But I have this vision and I have these desires to invest some more, but I feel like I'm coming from a place of I can't spend. And so really what I would recommend to any business owner in good times, especially in good times when money's easier to get, is go get that line of credit, build up goodwill and equity with creditors that are going to be available to you when you need it. For example, in that same pandemic example that I gave, I didn't need the cash, but I qualified for an EIDL loan because we lost a certain percentage of our business right away. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. So I applied for a loan and I secured a loan. And that loan, I've not touched a penny of it. Right now, it's earning a certain percentage of money right now every month in interest, and I'm making payments. So my payments is offset by the interest. It's really costing me nothing. So it's a low interest loan, but I just have it sitting there so that I can always think like an investor. Last year, we invested. I invested in my team ahead of the revenue growth. And so I burned cash last year. A lot of people listening to this would say that's a bad idea. I never want to burn cash. Well, we did. And now I have a team that I'm really excited about as our revenue is growing. I already have the team in place because I had money in the bank that I could invest. And so it's not always an easy lever to go grab right away when you're in need, but when you're not in need, make sure you get access to capital, whether it be a line of credit or a low interest loan. Find ways to have even as a safety net or a nest egg for your business so that you can think and act like an investor when opportunities come up. What would you add, Eric? Because you have a lot of experience.
Yeah, I think one of the ways is you have to take yourself out of that business as the owner, as a person writing the checks, and think like, if I was an advisor to this business, or if I was on the board of directors for this business, what advice would I have for them? And maybe make it like a case study. So like, okay, maybe do make it a case study, and then go out and get some advice from some other people, and don't make it personal. Make it similar to your business, but not make it exactly about your business. So then you can go get advice for some other people to see how they would see it, and then go into that with an open mind to understand where your scarcity mindset might be impacting that business. The same for partnership. Like if you're in a partnership in a business, you should be making decisions for that business as a board of advisors, or someone that is giving some advice for that business, not as a partner in that business. If you're doing it as a partner in that business, then you are doing it from a selfish standpoint, or a point, your point of reference that it comes damaged because you don't have just a clear view of that business. So in other words, think about yourself as a board of advisors for that business, and what would you advise somebody else in that situation? And oftentimes, you might have different advice for that person, and probably different advice for yourself. I like it. I would always tell people, and I still do, like, get your line of credit now. Like, cash is good. You're cash flowing. You have a great business. Get your home equity line. You don't have to use it. Just get a business equity line. Just get a personal equity line. Like, just have that in place. So if you ever do need it for whatever reason, for a rainy day, a business opportunity, it's in place. And I think that's just solid advice. So yeah, that's what I would add to that. But I think you're right on with that scarcity mindset, because people, they're so involved in their business, and it's right in front of them, and especially if they haven't been used to having capital. They've been used to having 100,000 or $1 million in the bank, or whatever that number is, and then they see it gone, and then they're starting to make bad decisions. So I would that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. Along with the mindset.
One other thing, Brett.
Yeah,
One other thing. Like, if this did happen, and then run that thing out, if I did invest into this infrastructure, or I did make this key hire, and they did turn out how it was supposed to be, run that out for a year or two and see what it does to your time in the business, see what it should do to the P&L in that business. And so you see what could happen if you do make that investment in your business, and your mentality changes. And then you can track that and see if you're on track or off track. So that's something else that I'd probably add.
Yeah, add that modeling piece. So if I go ahead and make the decision now, what do I expect that will turn into? And then I can track it. Love that. And then let's get creative. Sometimes we think, oh, that key hire is going to be, $100,000 hire. And we start to think, I don't have $100,000. Well, in month one, you don't have to have $100,000. You got to have, $9,000 to cover that payroll or whatever. And so sometimes we limit what is possible because we think of the fully loaded expense over a year, for example, in the case of a key hire, whereas it's in monthly chunks of time, and we can always undo it. If we've got, let's say we got 20, 30,000, we can try this for 2 or 3 months because we believe it's going to lift sales, for example. Now I can actually afford this person, or it's going to bring some efficiency into my business. Now I can actually afford this business. So use the modeling that Erik just talked about, play the scenarios out. How much savings would I have to have? How much revenue growth would I have to afford this key hire over time, and watch at the point where it looks like that it breaks even on that investment decision. And then you know exactly how much cash you got to come up with, or how much credit you got to come up with to make it work. And then even on top of that, we can get creative. And I'm sure you've done this, Erik, where you can go to that key person and say, well, you got to have a clear vision, right? Hey, key person, I see this possibility, and I see you as being a key to making that happen. Challenge is we don't have the cash right now to compensate you what you're worth in the open market. But if you can help us create this, here's a path to rewards for you in the future that, if you'll come in and help make it happen, are yours. And so you can negotiate with people to come in on pay that's less than they would normally make in another place, because of your vision and because of their belief and their excitement in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think you can also look at yourself and see what you're currently doing in your business, and you start to understand if you enjoy it and if you're good at it and you want to keep doing it, and how that has an impact on your business. So look at all of those things, and let's say you're not able to do enough of what you enjoy, and that has big impact on your business. And if you could do more of it, it would actually mean more revenue or no more net profit for your business. So if you could offload some of that other stuff, so many times it's just hiring a VA. Like, that's low hanging fruit for most people. So you hire that VA, and then it frees up more time for you, or you hire an A plus operational person, and then it frees up time for you to build the business, and whether it's marketing or sales or key relationships or key vendors, or just thinking about the business more and being able to generate more revenue. So I think it's you get to the point where you are the cap on that business, because you're doing things in the business that you're the cap, you're the lid. And maybe it's operations. I say operations because that's mine, and if you're still in operations, it's time for you to move out, then hire that person, and then you can go have a greater impact on the business by being out of the business.
Yeah, I love that you point out the lid that all of us are on our business. There's not actually a point in time, in my belief, that we aren't the lid. Like, our business cannot outgrow us. And if we're not out there growing, learning, figuring out what the next thing is, our business is capped at our current level of operating or leading or being. So we gotta keep pushing ourselves. We got to get out of the way and bring in people to help make it happen. So well said, Erik. I've really enjoyed our conversation. As we wrap this up, what would be the best way for people to get in touch with you or learn more about Front Street Equity Partners? If they're
So if you're interested in the franchising world at all, go to franchisesecrets.com. That's my podcast, and I got a lot of free resources for people there. I'm not selling anything there. So Franchise Secrets is my podcast. There you can get into the Facebook group. And the Facebook group is just a really good, easy place to learn about franchising, or to get around other people that are in franchising. And then, like at Front Street Equity Partners, it's Front Street EP, like equitypartners.com. And if you have a concept that you're thinking about franchising, or you have a franchise concept already and you want to grow and scale it with some advisors, we're always up to having conversations. I used to charge about $2,000 an hour for my time. And now I get to have very good, helpful conversations with people in franchising without charging a penny for it. So it's a lot of fun for people like me who like to build relationships with people and help people along the way. So we end up partnering with less than 1% of the people that we actually start talking with. So Front Street Equity Partners and Franchise Secrets. That's the easiest way, Brett.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having the openness to be on our podcast today. And for all of you listening, please share, like, do all those things to make sure that as many seven-figure business owners as possible can hear these episodes with our great guests like Erik. Again, thank you for being here, Erik. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a bunch. It was fun.
All right. That's it. Please keep listening. We'll keep bringing episodes to you with great guests, and we hope that you continue having success in your business.